Morning, guys. Kind of a surprise video for you. I'm procrastinating getting ready from work a little bit. Uh, but I wanted to tell you another story, sort of continuing where I left off with Storm Arrow. This story is called Wayfinder. This is Wayfinder. Wayfinder is actually, it's my oldest ritual implement, and more than any other person or tool or being, this is my oldest companion on the path of figuring out who I am spiritually. Um, it's got an inscription on it, which I'll show you. It's in, I think this is Younger Futhark, and it reads, Time of Hag, Time of Crone, Time of Blood, Time of Bone. Everything that dies is reborn. There is no end. Wayfinder first came into my life when I was probably 17 or 18. So a couple of years after the Storm Arrow. If you don't remember that story, go watch it. It'll help put this in context. Because I had nothing to go on with any of this stuff as far as, the nascent awakening of a pagan goes. I had Google, and that was it. And I tried to be honest with my family about it at first. They were not outright dismissive, but less than supportive. I distinctly remember being asked if this was a World of Warcraft thing that I was doing. I was and am a huge gamer. I remember that kind of wistfully now, actually, because, well, I don't really need to go into that here, but yeah. So I was alone. All I had to go on was what I could find on the internet and then decide whether or not it jived with me. That's still the focus of my practice is, consume a source and then decide, does it fit with the practice that I have and the beliefs that I already have. Thankfully, I'm a lot more aware of what my belief system is, but that's really more due to my philosophical training than anything else. I'm wandering afield from the story. Wayfinder. So I was about 17 or 18, probably 18, and I was hanging out with a couple of friends of mine at a festival in the town I grew up in. It originally, I think, was supposed to be like a 4th of July thing, but it kind of just migrates all over summer. It's still called the Stars and Stripes Festival. I don't even think it's held in that city anymore. I think it moved somewhere else, but all the local shops downtown would have, big events and sales going on during the festival, this big, 4 or 5 day thing. And so we were kind of just wandering around, looking around, because we were, 18-year-old kids who had money to spend on their own for the first time and little and less idea what to do with it since, we were lucky enough to still have mom and dad paying most of the bills. Privilege is weird. Anyway, so we were walking through and we found this place called Gemini Moon. As I'm sure that you can guess from the name, it was a metaphysical shop. All kinds of books and candles and incense and crystals, and so I fell in love immediately. When I was home from school, Gemini Moon was my regular hangout. There were all kinds of things to do, all kinds of fun activities to try, and the very acerbic witch who owned the shop and her even more sarcastic mother became two of my probably formative influences on what it's like to be a spellcaster in the modern era. Certainly didn't help the fact that I was already sarcastic as shit, thanks to my mother. Anyhow, and So I don't know if this will jive with any of you, but often in the search for some sort of implement, whether it's, a staff or a new deck of tarot cards or what have you, there's a feeling. It's almost tactile, like it's vibrations that I can feel in my palms. It always has been. Um, it took me years to learn that I have very open hand chakras, but that's video for another time. But something like it sang so loud. It was like the high notes in O Fortuna from Carmina Burana. Like just like everywhere I walked in the shop, I could hear it, but I couldn't. So I'm feeling around, trying to figure it out. I'm being made fun of by my friends, by the shop owner, by her mom sitting in the back playing a crystal quartz singing bowl. Just mercilessly heckling me as I'm wandering through the store like I'm blind with my hands at arm's length, trying to figure out what it is that I can hear calling me so clearly. And then I finally get to the back of the store and I see a stack of staffs, all similar to this one, though every single one is one of a kind. And it shouldn't have been this way. The store was lit by fluorescent lighting. It was like 8:30 at night, so it was sunset, which means it was all the tall buildings downtown. It was dark. But this thing gleamed like the sun on new fallen snow. It was so bright. It was so shiny. It was such a weird experience in hindsight. But all I knew was, this is the thing that is screaming at me. And so I grabbed it, and I took it up to the counter, and she told me that it was going to be like $150. And I was like, shit, I do not have that kind of money. Gas is expensive. Gas is very expensive. Gas was like $3.40 a gallon or something ridiculous at the time. Now I realize that ages me. For those of you who are much older that can remember when gas cost less than $1 and was cheaper than tap water. But I've gotten very used to it being right around $2 where it is now. So remembering when it was $3.50 and it cost me most of my paycheck to fill the tank, my Chevy Lumina, it's different. But I didn't have the money. So they were like, all right, we'll take a deposit. You got to put 10% down. So I gave her $20 and I left. I'll be back next weekend. I'll be back in a couple of weeks. No. Didn't happen. That was the summer, well, not the summer, but that was the year that I won't go into too many details here because it's not my story to tell, this part of it, but basically my parents' marriage imploded. You'd have to ask them for the full story because, like I said, it's not my place to tell. I'm pretty sure only one of them will talk about it with you at length, but that's not the point. The point is that I had a lot going on in my world, and Wayfinder waited. Wayfinder had to wait. It just, I couldn't do it. I could barely deal with the inside of my own head, let alone having to go spend money on, let's be real, something that at the time I didn't think I really needed. It was cool, but this was going to be a prop. It was like the thing that made it appeal to me at 18 and 19 when I didn't know better about what ritual tools and what spiritual implements are good for, is that this was just going to make me kind of look like Gandalf a little bit. I didn't know better. I didn't know better about a lot of things. But I was dealing with a lot of really pent-up stuff, like, blaming myself for what was happening to my family. So, my own failed relationship and a lot of therapy later comes the next summer. And the Stars and Stripes Festival comes again. And for the second time, I discovered Gemini Moon. And I walk in, and this time they're not like, and again, a lot of this is going to be through the lens of hindsight. So I walk in, and the shopkeeper just spends the whole time staring at me like this. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what I did. I don't remember this place. I'm pretty sure I didn't steal anything from you. Because I used to be a little shit. I'll be real with you. I used to be a little shit. But I'm like, I didn't steal anything from you. And I never vandalized the store that I know of. I definitely didn't like rip open the books or anything. I didn't steal any crystals. Why are you looking at me like you're trying to decide whether I'm worth the time to hex? And so finally I just start staring back at her. And over her shoulder, the tip of Wayfinder has an amethyst set into it. Do you see that? The amethyst caught the light of the overhead light behind the counter, and it glinted just right then. I looked at it, and I was like, oh, I remember this place. And she turns around, sees what I saw, and says, I thought you looked familiar. It turns out she was just trying to place me the whole time. So she gave me the staff for, like, it ended up being $60. She goes, it waited for you all this time. If it was going to go anywhere or needed to go to anybody else, I would have sold it. So you give me what you can pay for it, and we'll call it good. I did end up spending like another $100 that day, but she only charged me like another $40 for the staff. I had found a couple books that I needed. By this point, I was back into the mode of dig deep as far as my faith goes. So I was digging into to the ancient druids. I was learning about Celtic things. The Morrigan had made her brief appearance in my life. Well, her first brief appearance in my life. I'm not currently willing to rule that out with all the other stuff that's going on, but that'll be a further video in this series. Well, Wayfinder came home with me that day. And as soon as I got home, I sat at my tree. We had a big, huge silver maple in the front yard. And I like to sit under it. It was in the front yard, so that was a little weird. I think my neighbors probably thought I was strange. But I used to sit under the silver maple, just like meditate or whatever. A lot of it was experimenting with some of the techniques I was learning in various books I'd been reading. One of them, which I'm currently reading again now, is called The Temple of Shamanic Witchcraft by Christopher Penchak. And if you're into like a nature-based practice, I really recommend it. This is my second time working through it, and it always just brings me back to the place where I feel connected to the world around me. It's a nice feeling. I really like it. So you should go through that book, because it also has you work on yourself, and I was not capable of doing the shadow worky bits of that book, because like I said, at the time I was reading it, which is the same time Wayfinder came into my life, I was going through some pretty heavy shit. It was pretty dark. I'm not going to lie to you. It was messed up, and I handled it poorly, as most 19-year-old boys are going to do. Men were not taught to deal with our emotions well in modern society, and I had a lot of them. So, now it was easier with Storm Arrow to sort of like make it relevant. Why it should matter to you what my story is, but Wayfinder is the tale of a couple things. One, you will know the things and the places and the people that are meant for you by the way that they feel. It may not be, so like clouds parting and angels singing from on high, to use a Christian metaphor, kind of thing like Wayfinder was for me. Sometimes it's just it can just be a subtle energy, a gentle vibration that this thing is meant for you. In a bowl full of shards of obsidian, you might find one that just it feels like its vibration is in tune with you, and you pick it up and take it home. You pay for it in between those two things. I cannot stress that enough. Metaphysical shops struggle They're in a business where those of us who frequently patronize them are the only people who recognize their necessity. Nobody else does. So for the love of God, don't steal shit from your metaphysical shop. Pay the people who are bringing this stuff to you because they need it. It's their livelihood. They need it to survive. I just watched my friends lose their business. Theft wasn't the problem, but still. Support your local metaphysical shop. That means buying the shit you need from them. Also, don't go to Amazon if you can avoid it. Like, I love Amazon's 2-day shipping, but if I can get it local, I'll do that first. I walk out with it in my hands. B, like I said, it keeps food on people's tables and the lights on in their houses. Jeff Bezos doesn't need any more of your money. Anyway, the things that are meant for you, the places that are meant for you, the people that are meant for you, you'll know it. You'll feel it. It will be right to be there, to hold that thing, to talk to those people. You will know. You will always know. The things themselves will find a way of telling you. Now, granted, my animism creeps into that a little bit, and for those not familiar with the term, animism is a belief, goes along with a lot of pagan faiths, that everything, every object has a spirit, and in my case, I also believe they have a name. So that includes the twin black walnuts that grow out back of my house, or the twin Japanese maples that grow out in front of it. Wayfinder has a spirit. My shillelagh, this other walking stick type implement thing that I've got, this has a name, the spirit. Granted, I just call it shillelagh, but it speaks more to the Celtic work I do from the Norse stuff. And again, I promise to get into that later. Every deck of tarot cards I've ever owned has called my name from the box or from the bookshelf. In that case, it was a bookshelf. The Wild Unknown Tarot I bought at a Barnes and Noble, of all places. But you'll know. Whether or not you actually believe that every living thing and even every unliving thing has a spirit, you'll know. The things will still find a way to tell you because they all have a vibration. And there are some vibrations that are in tune with yours or want to be. And they'll let you know. You'll feel it. You'll sense it somehow. Now, hopefully the people will tell you, that they like your company or that they want to spend time with you, or that if it's a more spiritual bent, that your goals and theirs align metaphysically or whatever. But you'll know. The other thing about this is that stuff will wait for you. And this is more like a way to reframe the way we think about time. Like, the guy who made Wayfinder made 12 other staffs sort of similar to it. Like I said, there were 13 or 14, and they were all, roughly similar but slightly different to each other. Excuse me for a second. I should have brought a glass of water in here. But I don't know, I have no way of knowing when Wayfinder was finished. But Wayfinder sat on that shelf. And the moment that my hand first touched it was in Wayfinder's future for a while before it came to me. Or I came to it, or however you want to think about it. Before our paths crossed, might be a better way to put it. That's the thing that I think some people get wrong about destiny, is that destiny can be gentle. It can be subtle. It can be quiet, and it can be small. Destiny is not always this grand, sweeping, divine design, although it certainly can be that thing. if the divinity speaks to you, it's got a plan for you. Whether that's the Christian God or a pagan one, really doesn't, to my way of thinking, really doesn't make a difference. The fact that divinity speaks to you at all means that it has a plan for you, if in fact it speaks to you. And I can't argue that. That's your experience, which is sacred, because I can't get into it. It's totally inviolable. I can't experience the world the way you do. It belongs only to you. Just like my experiences belong only to me. And they're sacred in that respect. No one else can touch them. They can only judge what they see from the outside, which is a really terrible way of making decisions about things you experience. But anyway. Sometimes destiny is little. Sometimes a thing... Get off the altar. Get down. Sometimes a thing just knows that you and it need to work together, and it will go with you. It will want to go with you. That's something that you need to listen for. It's something you need to be sensitive to. It's one of the easier, in my opinion, personally, I think it's one of the easier skills that any, nascent spiritual practitioner needs to learn is what is and isn't meant for you. And you'll feel it. We're coming back around to the beginning of this second half of the video now. The other thing about that, though, at least in my experience, is that you become... Your gravitational pull gets stronger the more of these experiences that you open yourself to, just because Wayfinder's vibration is not exactly the same as mine, although in the decade that I've been working with it, it's gotten much closer. We sing a much more similar tune together than we used to before. We've harmonized. But it's still different, and it's different enough that other also different vibrations can be drawn in. That's where that's like the shillelagh, for example. The shillelagh is for stuff that Wayfinder is not. Before, if I needed to use something like a stick in a ritual, Wayfinder was what I had, and that was it. So Wayfinder was staff, rod, wand. It was all those things at once. It's not anymore. This is my staff. Shillelagh is my rod. I have a wand in the bedroom that's not that kind of wand, I promise. It's the wooden kind. I made a set of runes for myself. And it became my everyday working set, and then I made another one, and it became the ritual casting set. And then the first set that I owned that was bought from a very dear friend, Lafayette Goat on Etsy. Check it out. That shop is amazing. Those are my altar runes now. And so you're the more that you draw this stuff into your world, the more of this stuff that will come to you. It's kind of like a black hole, really, in that not even light can escape. And the closer that things get to you, the stronger your gravitational pull becomes. Now I have a staff, a rod, a wand, 3 or 4 decks of tarot cards, 2 decks of oracle cards, 4 sets of runes, 3 of which are handmade. I've got a ritual hammer. I've got a crystal ball. I have 100 different crystals. All of these things are the slow accumulation of a decade of actively practicing as a pagan and as a spellcaster. Wayfinder was the beginning of all that. Wayfinder, like I said, was my first companion on this journey and my first ritual tool. And if the day comes when all of its uses are supplanted by other things, then Wayfinder will just get a place of honor. I'll find a way to mount it on the wall next to my altar or something. But Wayfinder was here first. And, you know, without Wayfinder, I don't know if I would have. I mean, the name sort of gives away the end of the sentence. It helped me find my way. It helped me find my path. And it helped me walk it when the road got difficult. So be open to the way spirit and divinity and magic can enter your world. The more of it you let in, the more of it you will have the opportunity to let in. If, like me, one of the draws of this life of being mystical, of being spiritual, of being pagan, is that it brings magic into a world that sorely seems to lack it, you still have to let the magic in. Part of that for me was unlearning, you know, the things I heard, that it wasn't real, because it is. It just looks different than you expect it to. You're never going to be able to shoot a fireball out of your hands, at least not magically. Maybe science can find a way to do that for you. But there's magic walking on a forest trail, or when the wind blows in heralding the oncoming storm. There's magic in stuff like that. And if you open yourself to the way that the world is magical, you may just cross a Wayfinder of your own. So that's it for this video. More will be coming eventually. There's, as always, going to be Tarot Tuesday. So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys next time out.